What's up everyone, Soldier First Class here. In today's mission, I want to talk about 5 gameplay improvements that Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 needs to have. The gameplay of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was incredible, but there are still some things that the fanbase would like to see for Part 3, and I decided to take input from the community to see what those things are. I found myself agreeing with quite a few of them, so I'll be featuring those in the video. Before we get into it, if you enjoy this video, be sure to omni-slash that like button for me. And if you're looking for more Final Fantasy VII guides, content, and news, subscribe to the channel and turn those notifications to all so you don't miss a single upload. Now let's get right into it. This first one is something that I believe would make this combat system even better, and a large amount of people think so too, and that's the Gambit system. Final Fantasy XII's combat featured the Gambit system, which allowed you to set your AI party members to do certain commands when certain parameters were met. Get below 50% HP, the character will cast a healing spell. Facing off against a flying enemy, use a certain ranged attack. The list goes on, but I think the remake series could benefit from a streamlined Gambit system, which could also be entirely optional. We actually did get a similar system in Rebirth, but it was relegated to the Proto-Relic quest that had you playing Gears and Gambits. If you're not sure how the Gambit system functions, Gears and Gambits uses literally the same system from Final Fantasy XII. The problem I have with the current system is that if you want that to happen now, you have to waste a materia slot on something like auto-cast, auto-unique ability, or auto-weapon ability. They can definitely be used to great effect, but unfortunately it feels like they're kinda random and don't have much benefit in the end. It's really awesome to be able to control your characters individually, but knowing you can control one character without all the party management would be nice to shake things up too. Moving on to the next gameplay improvement, this might be the second most popular one that I've seen in the community, and that was triple synergy attacks and more diverse synergy attacks. With games like Chrono Trigger pulling this off, for a long time people have wanted to see another game pull it off that well. However, with so much to manage in an action 3D game, it might be difficult to pull off. However, we do see in cutscenes that characters do group attacks quite often with large bosses, so it would be cool to see those things happen in actual gameplay. Granted, I know it's obviously much easier to do those things in CGI than in the combat engine, but it would still be cool to see. Updating synergy skills and abilities would be great too. I love the synergy attacks, but as some have stated, they kinda get stale after several hours of playing this game, especially if you're doing a second run through on hard mode. More diversity and synergy ability side effects would be great too. Things like adding status effects to an enemy, automatic breaking of enemy body parts, or even higher cost synergy abilities that instantly cause pressure. These are just random ideas, but the thought is just to create more diversity in the effects seen after the attack was completed. Next up on the list is one that I've kind of been hammering away at in conversations, and it's added side dungeons and combat counters in the open world. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love the world boss system the game has, and the combat intel is a pretty fun side distraction. However, in the way of optional content, the game is fairly straightforward and has the same repeating formula throughout each region. Yeah, the enemy variety is different depending on which region you're in, but there's no optional dungeons or side content that really drives home this open world. Pretty much every meaningful super boss or combat encounters that aren't in the main story are in the battle simulator, and even then, those are just constant repeats of the same enemies over and over. I think doing things outside of the battle simulator would be a much welcomed addition to an already good open world. For improvement number 4, this might have been the most requested improvement of this video, and that's full-on party swapping. Final Fantasy X's conditional turn-based battle system featured the ability to swap party members in whenever you wanted. Granted, that was turn-based and this is action-based, but the idea is still the same. Rebirth added the mechanic that party members not in your main party would fill the backline and appear in combat with you in a non-controlled capacity. These characters fire off supportive attacks, but don't really do much besides the occasional standard attack here and there. However, when you build up enough synergy points, you can do backline commands and do synergy abilities, even if your other 2 party members are knocked out. While this is great, I and many others would love to see the ability to swap in party members on the fly. This will be especially nice when we get the last 2 party members, Cid and Vincent. Not only would this add great flexibility to combat encounters, the developers could actually create combat encounters with this type of system in mind. To be honest, the system could actually be pretty simple, but it would need some restrictions so it wasn't a constant swap and break combat encounters. You could tie it to a synergy system where party members need to build up enough synergy to swap out, or you could tie it to ATB and require 2 full ATB charges to swap out. There's definitely a few options they could go with, but I'd love to see this feature added. Before we get to our final improvement, I'd like to add some honorable mentions. For me personally, I'd love to see them adopt Final Fantasy XVI's training mode. The combat sim has some challenges that are downright brutal and legendary. I'm sorry. And being able to practice those bosses and enemy encounters would be an incredible feature to add. And this would be specifically for things like the brutal challenge, the Rulers of the Outer Worlds. It's honestly really hard to get much practice in on an enemy like Gilgamesh when he just demolishes you as soon as you get to him, and you have to go through 3 rounds of double boss fights just to get back to him. I know, as a Souls veteran, get good and all that. Another honorable mention would be to clean up the abilities menu a little bit. In the original, whenever you added special materia such as enemy skill, you got a new menu option. In Rebirth, all ability materia is added to your abilities list. Now obviously we get a lot of time to work with when in the tactical menu, but it still isn't very streamlined when searching for abilities. This one isn't a major thing for me, but I've seen it a few times out there, so I thought I'd at least mention it. And now for our final improvement, and I don't think anybody will be surprised, but it's materia loadouts and better materia combinations. Materia is the biggest aspect of the combat system for the Final Fantasy VII series of games, and that includes Final Fantasy VII Remake and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. In the original game, you had some absolutely broken materia builds that made the game baby mode if you put in the time and effort. While I understand that this is an action-based game made in the modern era, and balanced combat is a major issue the developers have to deal with, materia still feels like it could take some steps for improvement. We still don't have loadout swapping, mass materia swapping from one character to another, or even some of the major materia from the original. Granted, I know some of them just don't work for an action game, but some of the materia in this game just really don't matter after a while, or even at all. I couldn't tell you the last time I equipped autocast or even used vitality and spirit swap. Obviously we know that new materia is coming in part 3 of the remake series, but I'd love to see some really great materia combinations that bust combat wide open. There are definitely some absolutely devastating materia combinations already, but this materia system has so much potential for even more amazing combos. Overall, these are 5 gameplay improvements that I feel Part 3 of the Final Fantasy VII Remake series needs to work on. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth did so many things right and improved on the combat system an amazing amount. And to be completely honest, it may be my second favorite combat system after Final Fantasy X. It's for sure my favorite action combat system of all time. I can't wait to see all the amazing combat improvements that Teruki Endo and the team have in store for us in Part 3 of the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy. Thanks for watching, guys, and don't forget to omni-slash that like button. Let me know in the comments section below if there's any gameplay improvements you'd love to see in Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3. And if you're excited for more Final Fantasy VII Rebirth guides, Part 3 news, and content, subscribe to the channel and turn notifications to all so you never miss an upload. I'm Soldier First Class, and I'm on to the next mission. Later, guys.